Tom Pelissero is back here. How are you, Tom? Hey. Good to see you, man. How are you?
Doing fantastic, Rich. What's up to my boys in the studio?
Hey, Tommy P, what up, baby?
All right.
Hey,
Tommy P. Stop it.
All right.
It's so stupid. You take a video of him and then send it to. It's a waste of time.
It's really stupid this time because I was recording myself by accident.
Please stop.
This time, so.
Well, speaking of waste of time, the people who think that JJ McCarthy has an ankle injury, in air quotes, because he was so ineffective in his second start that they just had to bench him. You're already making that face. Walk me through what's going on there and the decision that they made on him last night prior to Thursday Night Football, and when we're going to see McCarthy next. Tom.
I've tried to explain this as consistently and clearly as I can, amidst all the conspiracy theories and the talks of a soft benching. JJ McCarthy has not had a lot of opportunities over 2 years in the NFL to practice football, much less play football. He had his entire rookie season wiped out because of the meniscus injury. Got reps, of course, through the course of this offseason. Week 1, goes out, didn't play well in the first half, but made a bunch of plays in the second half against Chicago on national TV. They're 1-0 in the division. Following week, his fiance gives birth to a child, misses a day of practice. It was already a short week. Game didn't look good, but he also got hurt, suffered a high ankle sprain in that game. So we have literally seen one full game of healthy JJ McCarthy. And by the way, he hasn't even practiced on consecutive days in a full capacity since before week 1. And so what the Vikings have tried to do is take a very deliberate approach to getting JJ McCarthy not just 100% healthy, but 100% in a groove and ready to go out there and play well. They were hopeful that was going to be right after the bye and he'd be able to do it against the Eagles and then the Chargers when they were playing 2 games in 5 days. But when I was told during the bye, hey, he looked good on the field last week, but the ankle's not 100%, that was a pretty good tell that between JJ, the medical staff, the Vikings coaching staff, they just didn't feel like he was already all the way there. You listen to Kevin O'Connell post-game last night. He made abundantly clear what I've been saying, which is that all signs are pointing toward JJ McCarthy being back in the lineup this week against the Lions. You're hoping that, with a mini bye, you get a bonus practice on Monday, more time for the offensive line that's been beat up, for those guys to get fully healthy here. You're hoping that the entire environment is set up for JJ McCarthy to go out there and have success. That is certainly what the Vikings are banking on after already playing more games with Carson Wentz than they ever intended or hoped or wanted to going into the season.
So do we see him against Detroit next week?
That is my anticipation, is that we'll see JJ McCarthy unless there is some type of setback, unless he tells the coaches, hey, I just don't think that I can go. He's had 6 full weeks now to recover from an injury that, by and large, that type of high ankle sprain is 4 to 6 weeks. That time lines up. Again, he gets an extra practice next week, so you can see him 4 times out there. If you see a full participation designation on JJ McCarthy come next Wednesday, that'll be a pretty clear indication all systems go, and he's going to be out there for a tough game against the Lions.
Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's talk about some other big-time games in Week 8. Aaron Rodgers says it's not a revenge game. I give you the floor, sir. Tom?
A revenge game might not be exactly the way that you would script it because, quite frankly, Aaron Rodgers, he wasn't traded away against his will. He was a willing participant for several years in wanting to leave Green Bay prior to the draft week deal that sent him to the Jets. Aaron's a remarkably talented player. He's obviously a very unique human being. He has a habit, and we've seen this publicly based on his appearance on certain shows, to say exactly what is on his mind and to complain about various things. Sometimes that can get weighty for an organization, but it did not, disrupt his ability to work with Matt LaFleur and win a couple of MVPs, with that group. It came to a point he felt like from the Jordan Love, the trade up to get Jordan Love and taking him in the draft, that from that point on, he had been kind of disrespected. That's where you started to hear different things. They ultimately tried to appease him by giving him a new contract before ultimately, he did not perform well in 2022. The time was right for everybody. The time was right for Jordan Love to go play. The time was right for Aaron, who wanted to continue playing, to go and do that in a different place. Is this game going to matter more to Aaron Rodgers? I'm not inside his head, but my short answer would be, Rich, absolutely, Aaron Rodgers is going to want to go out and play well against the Packers, show the organization that he's still got it. on some level, he likes Jordan Love, and those two worked a lot together. And you see the impact of Aaron Rodgers on, the little things Jordan Love does with his footwork and other things that really Aaron Rodgers, whether it was verbally or whether it was leading by example, he really helped bring Jordan Love along. But would it mean something to Aaron? I think that everything, Rich, in what could be Aaron Rodgers' final season, everything means a little bit more to him. Beating the Packers before ultimately, as he made clear in an interview with Green Bay reporters yesterday, eventually re-signs with them a one-day contract to retire as a Packer. Absolutely, that's something that he would remember a lot more than your average game.
Is Josh Jacobs going to go in this game? He's always questionable, and then he runs for 90 touchdowns. So, I mean, is there any concern on this or what?
It was legit close last week in Arizona, particularly after the plane got delayed for hours on end, and they lost all their nightly meetings. He went through a pregame workout. Josh always thought that he could go. He had to convince the Packers and the medical staff and the coaches that he could go. I would anticipate it's a similar type of situation here. Josh Jacobs is always going to want to go. He's going to have to make sure that the medical staff believes that as well. But, like you said, Rich, we've seen this a number of times. I mean, he was once questionable with a calf going into Seattle when he was playing for the Raiders and ran for 300 yards. Put nothing past Josh Jacobs. He's always going to believe he can go out and do it. Packers generally have a conservative type of medical approach, but as of now, I would anticipate Josh Jacobs going.
Niners sitting right behind the Packers in the NFC standings. Packers 1, Niners 2, taking on a Texans team that comes off a bye and gets spanked by Seattle, and it's a short week for them. Couple guys in this game. It's another Brock Purdy going to go. Is it Mac Jones instead? And then Nico Collins has not practiced with a concussion that he knocked him out of that game all week. What do you got for me on this big one in Houston, Tom?
It seems like Mac Jones is going to be the one to go. Kyle Shanahan said at the start of the week it would be a stretch for Brock Purdy to be out there. Mm-hmm. They still haven't had Brock Purdy practice in full one time since he initially suffered the injury, and then obviously came back in week 4 and had the setback here. Until you see him fully participating in practice, you can assume that it's going to be Mac Jones. Kind of the philosophy and the way that the 49ers have approached that is you give the reps to the guy that you think is going to be starting. Mac's been dealing with an oblique and a knee, but he's been fully participating in practice. So it seems like as much as there was hope for Brock Purdy, and eventually does he get the JJ McCarthy treatment and suit up and be the number 3 quarterback, at least in the short term? We'll see about that, but it certainly seems like this is going to be Mac Jones. As for Nico Collins, there's a procedure. Obviously, there's a 5-step concussion protocol that he has to clear. If he's not out there today, that's going to be a pretty clear indication that he doesn't have a chance, because you have to be able to get back onto the field, do non-contact work, and then be able to be exposed into a contact environment before the independent neurologist gives the final go-ahead here. All those things are part of the process. If he doesn't practice today, then there's virtually no chance we're going to see Nico Collins.
Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. So this one's wide open, but a simple question. What's the scoop with A.J. Brown, Tom?
A.J. Brown right now, or let's take the 2 parts of this because I know where you're going. One part is real hamstring injury. We've seen A.J. in the past practice very little or none at all and still go out and play on Sunday. My guess, and we'll find out when the injury report comes out, but my guess is they will list him as questionable, just knowing how the Eagles have approached these things in the past. But there seems to be a real question about whether or not he's actually going to be able to go out and play on Sunday. In terms of the broader picture, we had another Instagram comment or post or whatever it was on Tuesday. It's obvious that there's a lot of frustration in different, corners of that building. And even last week when A.J. Brown was making plays and appeared on the field to be back on the same page with Jalen Hurts, it seemed like, that would be the type of game that might heal some things. Apparently not entirely, or else A.J. Brown is just, wanting to kind of keep this alive and keep us talking about him here. What I can tell you affirmatively, Rich, is to this point, yes, Howie Roseman has gotten calls. Howie has told other teams, I'm not trading A.J. Brown. Could that change somewhere in the next couple of weeks? Never say never, but just knowing the history of Howie Roseman, and particularly when you're talking about a team that's the defending champs, that still has designs on repeating as the Super Bowl champs, the only way that you trade away your number 1 wide receiver is if you can pull off another trade and acquire a different number 1 wide receiver. There's some receivers that are available right now in trades, but none of those guys are A.J. Brown. We'll see how this evolves over the next 11 days. Right now, all you've got to read into is, like I said, the Instagram comments and the speculation. I've got nothing firm to say. A.J. Brown is going to be traded. Never say never, but at this point, doesn't seem like that's in the cards.
Okay, so what other games are of note here that I could ask you? You got the Chiefs taking on the Commanders. I mean, Jayden Daniels hamstring, not long term, but long enough to rule him out of a Monday night game middle of this week. What's the scoop there for a Washington team that they need him, yeah. Tom? I mean, let's be straight up. I mean, I know Mariota is somebody who can be stopgap, but this is it. Like, rubber's soon meeting the road on a season here.
Well, you're 3-4, and you're going to face a Chiefs team that looks like they once again might be the best team in the AFC,
right.
And you got a defense that hasn't been stopping anyone. Oh yeah, going up against the healthiest and most full-strength Chiefs team they've had, particularly with Rashee Rice back in the lineup. But with Jayden Daniels, the idea was if you're trying to push through the hamstring and get out on the field, that's different than going through a 2-week rehab protocol here and focusing on the rehab. They just wanted to take that option off the table at the start of the week, have Jayden rehabbing the injury. My understanding, and Dan Quinn has alluded to this publicly, it's a very low-grade hamstring injury. But when you're talking about a quarterback who uses his legs like Jayden does, he's a very good pocket passer, but he does use that mobility. You run the risk if you go out there even 8 days later of popping something, and all of a sudden now you're looking at an IR stint because you made it worse. They just want to focus on him getting healthy. So you're going to have to try to find a way with Marcus Mariota. The best news, if you're a Commanders fan, is Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel were full participants in practice on Thursday. It has been a while since either of those guys were practicing that much. That would seem, and listen, with Terry McLaurin, there's been no setbacks, but he got into last week and everyone thought he was going to play, and then he just decided he wasn't there. We'll see how that plays out through the course of the week. But again, full participation seems to have him on track. And Deebo, after taking last week off because that heel pain just got so bad, both those guys should be out there. That makes a difference. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some things, whether it's schematically or personnel-wise on defense, that are a little bit different. For Washington this week, they're going to have to throw something at a Chiefs offense that, like I said, is really looking like they're gathering steam right now.
So McLaurin, yes. Deebo, yes. Jayden Daniels, no, for Monday, as we know.
That is what it appears to be. Okay. Not firm yet on Terry or Deebo, whether or not they have a setback during the week, but seems like those guys are going to get back. We got a lot of quarterback stuff, Rich, going on, through the course of this week. Michael Penix Jr. also, he had the injury last week, and there was a lot of confusion. Raheem Morris kind of got misquoted in his press conference. People speculated, was it the foot? Was it the ankle? My understanding is Michael Penix Jr. has a bone bruise in his knee. That's where the injury is. Some things got lost in translation there. Doesn't sound like it's any type of a major deal. Full expectation that he's going to be able to play on Sunday against the Dolphins, but keep an eye on that. Does that impact him in terms of the types of things they want to do with him? Again, not a guy who's a big runner, but he does have functional mobility. If that's limited at all, then one thing the Dolphins defense does have is they do have pass rushers, so that's worth keeping an eye on. And then Bryce Young, as the Panthers go into a game against the Bills, I reported on Monday it's a high ankle sprain, not expected to play this week. The Panthers have said he's day-to-day, but has not practiced at all Wednesday and Thursday. They want to keep the door open until the last second, but seems like we're going to see Andy Dalton against the Bills on Sunday for a Panthers team that right now they got a lot going for them, Rich. First time we're at mid-season. You're talking about Carolina. I mean, they're a game back in the NFC South right now. They're a very relevant team, but now going up against the Bills team that seems to be getting healthier. They're coming off the bye. I think that's going to be a really interesting one to watch on Sunday.
And then you didn't even mention Lamar. Does that mean we're expecting him? I know Ben Johnson said this week for a Bears team on a 4-game win streak that they're planning for Lamar, and they'll just adjust to Snoop or Cooper Rush, which is probably a wise game plan. Is it Lamar? We got him?
I always hesitate to speak definitively on Lamar Jackson because there have been weeks where he doesn't do anything all week because he's sick or because he's banged up, whatever, and then he plays. He is just a bit of a wild card. What I would point to is John Harbaugh said before the bye, coming out of the bye, they expect Lamar to play this week. Lamar has been on the practice field, albeit limited, the past couple of days. I would be surprised sitting here right now if Lamar does not play on Sunday against the Bears. We'll get the final injury report. They could list him as questionable, but based upon what I know and what they have admitted or acknowledged publicly to this point, I believe Lamar will be back for a big game. I mean, you got to get this one on Sunday against the Bears. If you lose, you're 1-6, and you effectively have to run the table. They got a lot of guys back. Roquan Smith is back. That's huge for the defense as well. So seems like if the Ravens are going to make a run, they're going to be as close to full strength as they've been this entire season.
Yeah, if you look at the research packet we get from the top-notch NFL Network research staff, and I'm sure you do, Tom, because you're a professional. There are in the history of the playoffs since 1990, the number of 1-6 teams to make the playoffs is 0%. 0 out of 91. It's never happened. 2-5, 6.3%. So the chances become dumb and dumber a little bit higher with a win. So before I let you go, my weekly question: who's blowing up your phone? I shouldn't say that. My weekly question: which team are those who blow up your phone interested about? Wanted some tea spilled about? What's the scuttlebutt?
Let me give you two answers on this. The first one, since we are coming up on the trade deadline here, the main question that GMs and others in position to make trades have been asking me is, why is it so boring in the trade market right now? We are 11 days out. There's not been a trade in over 2 weeks, which, granted, there was a time not that long ago where there just weren't a lot of NFL trades. Now there are, and there's been this lull for the past couple of weeks. And what I would point to is that the teams that would be logical sellers just aren't in a position right now where they want to sell. That's the Jets, who, by the way, have a bye next week. So I would assume that after this game, that's where they have some discussions about what direction they want to go. The Raiders are on a bye right now. They're just not in sell mode. The Titans are certainly making people available, but they're trying to get Cam Ward going as well. In other words, the macro answer to this is there just is not that much of an urgency from a sell standpoint, combined with a lot of the teams that bought last year may have had some buyer's remorse. Because if you think about the highest profile trades that we saw a year ago, and granted, wide receiver is always a tough position to trade for in season because of the integration period and the rhythm and timing and tempo that's tough to microwave mid-season. But the biggest trades were Devontae Adams. Didn't work out at all. Amari Cooper went to Buffalo, and I don't fault the Bills for making that trade, but Amari did not play well the rest of that season. And then Deontay Johnson was such a mess that they ended up having to cut him before then reclaiming him so they get a comp pick, but that's an entirely different story. In other words, a lot of the big trades that we saw last year just didn't pay off, so everybody on both the buy and sell standpoints seem to be moving a little slower. I do think that when you get into next week and some of those sell teams, Cleveland has a bye in week 9 as well, maybe some of those teams, even though Cleveland's already made a bunch of trades, they kind of got ahead of the game here, you might see a little bit more action starting as we get past this weekend of games. The other thing that I want to say, Rich, and it's less about, though certainly some people bring it up, but I heard a lot about it on the broadcast last night, and I see a lot of it on social media, and it is the question, and it's a fair one, when you see those side-by-side graphics of Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones, and you hear over and over again, how could the Vikings have let these guys walk? Boy, they must really be regretting letting those guys walk. I think Kirk Herbstreit last night said it's buyer's remorse. Let's just take a quick review, and hopefully I've got a couple of minutes here. Let me take a quick review of the Vikings quarterback approach through this offseason. The guiding light of everything they were doing was they believe in JJ McCarthy. They drafted him at number 10 last year. They believe he's going to be the starting quarterback sooner than later. So whatever they did in terms of adding another quarterback, it needed to meet a couple criteria. One, it couldn't be so expensive that it hindered other roster building. Namely, they felt like they needed to rebuild and get bigger, more physical on the interior offensive and defensive lines. And number two, it couldn't be such a commitment that it effectively stalled the progress of JJ McCarthy. So they did make an offer to Sam Darnold. It was a shorter term type of an offer. There was a point at which, because of the way the quarterback dominoes were falling, it was not clear that Sam Darnold was going to get a big offer in free agency. And ultimately, even the deal he ended up signing with Seattle wasn't like an off-the-charts, top-of-market type deal like you might see under other circumstances for a guy who just went 14-3, is still young, and is playing the best football of his life. Then the Seahawks saw an opportunity. They trade Geno Smith. They get a third-round pick, and then they also acquired Sam Darnold for less money than Geno wanted from them. That's how he ends up there. Plan B then was, let's re-sign Daniel Jones. And they had a comparable offer on the table, very similar to what the Colts ended up giving Daniel Jones. But what they found out was Daniel Jones was actually leaning toward going to Indianapolis and effectively thought that his opportunity was better there. So they pulled their offer from Daniel Jones. And at that point, it was abundantly clear Daniel Jones would have been a short-term type of solution in Minnesota. It's now going to be JJ McCarthy's team. Obviously, the third thing that comes up is Aaron Rodgers expressing interest in coming to Minnesota. That was certainly something that they at least talked about, as you tend to do with a 4-time NFL MVP quarterback. But again, they felt like that was going to be something that was going to stand in the way of the development of JJ McCarthy. All of which brings me to some of the posts I was seeing last night, basically being like, just throw JJ out there. It's going to be bad. And if it's bad, just get rid of him and bring in something new for 2026. Aren't we literally having the conversation right now about other teams giving up on quarterbacks and what Baker's doing now, what Darnold's doing now, and Daniel Jones? They're trying to do something, Rich, that's unorthodox and outside the box and frankly uncomfortable for a lot of people. Why isn't JJ playing? Because Kevin O'Connell doesn't think that's the right thing right now. This week, he's finally close to full health on that ankle. He's going to get an actual week of work. Let's see what JJ McCarthy does for the rest of the season and then revisit all those conversations. But they didn't just let these guys walk. They didn't say, we don't need you. They tried on some level to bring those guys back. Ultimately, good for Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones. They picked the right spots for him. They're winning games, and putting themselves in position to make a lot more money for years to come.
I'd have given you more time, but you wasted time saying hello to everybody before. I got to run. Tom Pelissero, everybody. He's just too nice a guy. DJ. Too nice a guy. We'd get more information if he wasn't so damn nice. Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.